The photographic training video you are about to watch is part of the Photo Education Network, created to provide one-stop shopping where professionals and amateurs alike can go to find photographic-related training videos, workbooks, and audio tapes. Topics include everything from posing and lighting to weddings, from senior portraiture to children's photography. To view individual titles and to read about the instructors, visit the Photo Education Network at www.photoeducation.com, or to receive a full catalog of available titles, call the Photo Education Network toll-free at 1-800-510-1765.
My name is Bob Quick. I'm a marketing and sales representative for the Burrell Color Corporation. I'm in Toledo, Ohio today, and we're conducting a workshop on sales. And I'm at John Wurzel's studio, and John has wanted to record this so he can follow up on the notes, the memos, and the things that we've talked about. As we begin and start thinking about sales and making sales, the first question that comes to my mind is asking the question, do you know what sales is? What does it mean? In our research and in our studies, we find that there are a lot of negative connotations to sales. The first thing that we think about when we talk about sales are somebody walking across a used car lot and somebody pouncing upon them and never letting them go. And as we've interviewed people across the country, we find that most people have some very, very definite feelings about sales. In fact, as most people think of sales as something they would not want to do, they think of it as being something that would actually cause them to be looked upon negatively by people. And the problem that we come into when we ask them and say, what is it that you don't like about people? The first thing that everybody says, salespeople are pushy. Salespeople don't listen. Salespeople talk too much. Salespeople are aggressive. They won't listen. And as a result, what we're going to do is we look at a studio, we will try to look at some of the common mistakes that are made in studios today. What I have come to believe is that most of these people are neither pushy, they're not doing anything wrong except lacking from proper training. That training is a responsibility of the studios and the studio owners. I find that a lot of people think that if I can hire the right personality, if I can find somebody who has just great people skills, somehow or another, they'll be good in sales. Great personality is very important, and understanding and having good people skills will help, but they do not ensure success. Because sales requires techniques with which very few of us are familiar with. Most of us were raised explaining and expressing ourselves. We were never taught to listen. And if there is one key thing that we'll be talking about, is the secret to sales is listening, not talking. Let me tell you a story of my own experience when my wife and I went looking for a computer. We had very limited knowledge about a computer. We knew that we needed something for our studio. So we went out, and the first place we went to was Sears. We had a Sears credit card. We thought, wow, we see that they sell computers, let's go there. I had some information, and when I went to the salesperson, I asked them if they sold computers and would the computers do the following things, which basically was I needed it for keeping track at that point in time of my records and for bookkeeping. And the young man went up there and says, well, I really don't know. And so he pulled out the box from underneath the counter and looked at it and read it and says, yeah, I think this would be about what you're looking for. Put it back up and then looked at me and says, did you want to put that on your card? Well, I still didn't know if that was a right decision, a wrong decision. I knew that I needed a computer. So the next place I went to was one of these places that sell every brand name of computer in the whole wide world. I walked in and I saw computers from one wall to the next wall. The guy came up to me, I explained to him that I was a business owner, I was thinking about putting in a computer, and what I received from there on was a lecture in terms and languages that I did not understand. And as he went through each and every performance of every possible scenario, I became more and more and more insecure in what I could do. I didn't know anything. Now I was confused by information overload. They seemed real pushy. They kept trying to sell things. I didn't even know what questions to ask. So finally I went to a man that I knew built computer systems. And I knew him through a fellowship in the church. And I went to him and I says, Tom, I know that you make these systems. Do you ever just help people with their personal computers for small businesses? Well, that's the bulk of my businesses. Yes, we do the larger things. Now listen carefully as I describe how he approached the process. First of all, he set me down and he wanted to find out what I knew. He asked me questions to find out what my knowledge base was. Did I know what was available? So he was very quickly able to determine that I did not know that there was lots of possibilities and lots of options that are available and lots of choices that I could make, all of which had varying prices. So what he did was he asked me about what I was going to use it for. And I talked. So he spent a lot of time asking me questions. Then he asked me about what I would envision down the road using my computer for. Had I considered graphics? Had I considered doing my own publications? Had I considered any type of artwork that would be related to that? Because he had experience that I didn't have. Well, needless to say, when it was done, all he simply did was explain to me 2 or 3 options that I had. He presented to me a basic answer to my most immediate need. But he didn't start there. He started with the best. He told me if I wanted to really build for the future and what type of system he could develop, what the investment would be and why it would be a benefit to me. Said, of course, and then shared with me what the investment would be. Then let me answer that. Only after I had told him I did not believe I could afford that. I would like to do that. Then and only then did he share with me the next option, which was slightly less, of which he explained to me that at some point in time would be able to be upgraded to the other unit. And then as a last point, I said, well, tell me about the other one. I ended up investing, obviously, in the second choice. I didn't really want the basic. There were limitations. Now, in telling you this, I'm trying to share with you something that he knew, or at least had learned from experience, that we all need to know about sales. That when someone is entering a business or coming to talk to us about their portrait work, they have very limited knowledge. They bring a certain information base with them. When they call the first time on the phone, they have a certain information knowledge that they have. The first thing that we have to do in making these first contacts is we have to begin a dialogue by which they are talking. They are explaining. And we need to put in the back of our minds that all of the first contacts, the initial contacts, are an interview. This is a time by which we are interviewing them to where we learn about them. We learn about their prior experiences. We learn about where they were. We learn about their preferences. We learn about their family. We learn about their feelings. We learn about what they're looking for before we start making a suggestion. Now, over the course of our times together, I will talk about some things that I referred to on our last few visits about changing our marketing and merchandising in the studio. Obviously, if you only have a studio that is set around that says, I have a session fee, and now afterwards you'll make a choice, you'll be very limited in your sales approach to this. Because what we're going to try and do, for lack of better words, is what we're going to do is say, I'm an automobile maker, so I'm going to build an automobile for you. And then after I've built the basics of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and add on the features to make it something spectacular for you. I won't know if you can afford it. I won't know if that's really what you want. But that's what we're going to do. And as we look at the way that most of the studios are merchandising themselves today, they do not understand this very, very important premise. And it's based upon this. And D. Forbes Lay, in his book, The Bestseller, said, people buy what they want, not what they need. However, in the buying process, the mistake that most of us make in the sales room is that we use what is known as the barnyard technique. And D. Forbes Lay thinks that selling is a matter of taking and scooping a whole bunch of that smelly barnyard stuff, throw it against the barnyard wall until some of it sticks. Now, when I read his book and I heard that explanation, I think that's really true. It also leaves the impression that we're pushy. And when I have interviewed and listened to studios, I hear the mistake made all the time. When somebody calls the studio the first time, they'll ask about senior photographs, they'll ask about family photographs, they'll ask about spatials. And the studio staff, because they're poorly trained and do not know what to do at that point in time, immediately start talking priceless. They immediately start answering the first initial question. Now go back to the story that I talked about myself and the computers. Somewhere inside there, I went to the one studio, I mentioned computer, and what I got was computer talk and prices. Nobody talked to me about what was really going on. And we don't normally understand why someone is coming to us. Now we know that in the marketplace today, photographically, people can get photographs for free. You can go to a drop box in some little market down here, sign up for a free 8x10, a free 11x14. So consumers know the value of that type of product. In their mind's eye, it begins with free. They can go to some mass merchandiser and for $9.95 get 159 photographs. So already there are some preset knowledge in their mind about what's available out there. Now the question comes out, when they know they can get it for free, when they know that they could get it for $9.95 and have hundreds of little images, why would they call a traditional classic portrait studio? That's a very important question. And it's one with which we fail to understand why they would do that. First of all, are they looking for something free? I don't think so. Are they looking for something for $9.95 which they get hundreds of images? I don't think so. I think that they have been dissatisfied with what they have received, or they have seen something in the marketplace that they like. They are not happy with the price, and they're not happy that it's free. So they begin the conversation with a traditional studio, and sometimes they ask questions like, how much is an 8x10? They'll ask questions like, how much is a package? They'll ask questions, well, how much is a specific size? They'll ask you if you even do portraits. Those ought to be the first clue that we're dealing with a consumer, for lack of better words, excuse me, is ignorant. Not in any willful way. They do not have knowledge. They're looking for information. But the first thing that we should know is that they are searching for something. Are we skilled enough, and have we learned enough, and do we have the right questions to find out what they're really looking for? There's a big difference in going out and looking for a picture and seeking out a portraitist. In the mind's eye of the consumer, I want to lay one other base point down that really separates the tremendously successful studios from those who are not. If we were to take and line up 4 studios right downtown right here, and the people could go from door to door, and let's assume that the skill level of the photographers are all about the same, that they're using similar equipment, they are similarly talented, They're using the same film. Why would one of those studios potentially emerge as the leader when they're all making a similar image? Because it will happen. They will not all be equal. It has to do with something that is very crucial, that really makes a difference, and it's the verbal response. The verbal response. For example, if you called a studio and they begin the process by answering questions about saying, well, I understand you're calling about senior portraits. Let me just tell you about our packages and our spatials, and they start just throwing the stuff out. Versus calling a studio who began the conversation maybe in the following way. See, we have many options and many stories and many ways with which we could portray you. Let me ask you a few questions. If you could have your portrait created anywhere and say anything, what would it say? How do you want to feel about it 50 years from now? How important is this portrait to you? Are you looking for a skilled portraitist to tell you a story? Are you looking for something special? Are you looking for a gift? Where's that ultimately going to be used? Any number of things before we get to discussing price. Now, I'm assuming that we have smart studios who are vertically merchandised. I believe that the majority of the normal studios at this day and age have to be able to take care of need and want. And you market and merchandise the need with spatial promotions and spatial opportunities for people to come and enjoy the photography and what I would call the classic and traditional. But, however, when they came into the studio, they would be delighted to see portraits displayed on the wall. And let's say, for example, that instead of just having it on the price list that you could make a watercolor, that you created an entire product line that we would call the Impressionist. And when they walked in, one of the first images they saw displayed was a fully scaled, fully sized watercolor, framed, matted, that told the story of a little child in pastels. It looks like a piece of art. And next to it is a fully handcrafted, oiled portrait that looks like a classic oil painting in the scale that it would be there, in beautiful frames. And next to that, on a canvas, would be a lifestyle portrait of a family strolling along the beach at sunset in pastels, looking like a beautiful story, a slice of life. And next to that would be this incredible collection in archival black and white, which told the story of a man and a woman and their children. And next to that would be the portrait of a baby and the little toes and the little things that we would maybe call body parts, of which would be a collection, something of which would be timeless of this spatial moment. And as they walked through the portrait studio, they saw all these, and all of them were named. All of them were a collection. Now, they may have responded to the family portrait special that would be offered for 3 days, or spatial reasons for them to come in, of which they would look classically traditional. Now, when you think about this and go back to it, have we and do we understand the shopping experience? Have we taken the time to learn about this? Now, let me give you the story. A woman walks into a store and she's looking for a red blouse. She walks up to a sales rack, and here is a blouse. It's $19.95. It's a red blouse. She's got some time, so she wanders around and she walks over here, and here's a mannequin. And it's a red blouse. And that red blouse is $79. She wanders around, she goes up the escalator, she goes upstairs, she walks in another section. Here's a very nice red blouse, and it's $200. And she wanders around up there and she finds a blouse for $300. She goes up one more level to the place which is just a world of fantasy. And she finds these incredible dresses and this evening wear. And here also is a red blouse, and it's $500. Now, if a consumer were to call that store and say, how much is a red blouse? There would have to be some questions asked, an interview would have to take place to find out what that woman was looking for. Now, we all recognize they were red blouses. They were coverings for the body. But I can assure you that when I say a red blouse at $19.95, it conjures up an image in a woman's mind of what it looks like and feels like versus a $400 red blouse that would be formal evening wear. But they are both red blouses. Thus is the same parallel in portrait studios. There is a huge, huge difference between an 8x10 that would be a simple product, easily manufactured, that anybody could do on a sit-down rug, versus a wonderfully handcrafted, impressionistic portrait of a slice of life. It's not the piece of paper. It's not that this 8x10 makes the value, because see, an 8x10 has no value. The value is what's on the 8x10, and what it means to the people in that 8x10. It's about transposing feelings. And there is where in merchandising we have to arm our studios with the properly crafted merchandise studio, so that now when they call or they walk in, we can take them through these things. We have that affordable offering. We have that mid-range offering. And we're not talking about making a photograph big. We're not just talking about putting it on canvas. Those are finishing services that are available. They do not necessarily make the intrinsic portrait more valuable. Just taking an ordinary photograph and making it big does not make it extraordinary. It just makes an ordinary photograph big. An extraordinary image, properly sized, that's a whole different story, scaled. So for our thinking as we walk through the sales part of this, understand that we have to have a collection of need-based offerings. We have to have an offering of collection of traditional-based offerings. And then we need to have what we will call, for the purpose of our discussion, a signature or a home furnishing series. Images created with the whole idea of displaying them in a home, telling someone's story, designed as furniture for the wall. In the years that I spoke at the Wall Portrait Conference with Ken Whitmire, I probably received the best lessons I've ever learned on why people display images and why they need to be properly sized. But at the base root of it, it comes back to some certain elements of human behavior. You just cannot go home, make a photograph big, price it up, and start selling. There have been people who have suggested that, and it's ruined studios. The one element that's left out of these equations is the people who are presenting, the people who are doing the interview. They are the most powerful and the most influential individuals and the most overlooked individuals in portrait photography today. Photographers spend fortunes going to seminars. Photographers spend tremendous amounts of money learning their craft and invest very little time and money in the people who would actually bring someone in front of their camera to enjoy what they do. They think somehow or another if they can make it pretty, it will sell itself. There is no truth in that at all because of the human element. Let me give you example A and B. Here's a studio that has tremendous skills with people. They make and create what I would call a nice product. Their business flourishes. The people keep coming to them year after year after year. And right down the road is someone who wins all the awards, who has all the ribbons, who judges claim as being one of the greatest photographers they've ever seen, who are starving to death. So if it's just dependent upon the product, why is this person who has all these awards, who've received all this recognition, why are they not successful? I believe, and I believe statistically, and it can be proven, it is the people element. Write this down. This is the most important thing that we can ever learn about sales. First, the people pick the person, and then they allow that person to influence their decision. They first pick you. Now, statistically, I have heard that you have seconds with which for them to decide and assess whether or not they want to do business with you. Not the company you represent, but you. There's too many times where I've been working with different studios, and we find it very interesting that they will have designers. And one designer has tremendous sales averages. Another designer in the same studio, representing the same product, working for the same studio and photographer, has very poor sales averages, and always says, and her excuses are, they don't want to spend that much money, they really didn't have that, that's not what they really wanted, they really didn't like the images, etc., etc. I find that very interesting, that in the same room, these things exist. What I have learned is that people, in the picking and the choosing of someone, picked that other person because of how they felt. This other person they did not trust. And as a result, because they did not trust that person, they had more complaints, more criticisms, and more concerns. This trust issue and this influence issue is what has separated the greatest salespersons in all sales arenas in the world. It is not an intangible. It is something that can be learned. But understand that as human beings are created, they sense genuineness. They sense truth. And that one of the things that cannot be necessarily trained into someone is genuine concern. It is possible that people could learn mechanically to achieve higher sales, but never rise to the pinnacle of someone who really created a relationship with people of this high trust level. Entrepreneur Magazine, about 8 years ago, listed the top 100 reasons that people would choose to do business with someone. Let me list the top 3 that what people are looking for in doing business. The number one thing that people are looking for is a relationship. The second thing that they're looking for is an experience. And the third thing is they want predictable consistency. These are very, very important topics in today's market as we move into the digital technology, the changes that are involved. And I sense and I feel that a lot of the studios are making major mistakes in how they even present these new products. Now let's go back to the first contact, and let's go back to the building of the relationship. A question that needs to be asked then, once again, is what business are we in? Based upon the idea that someone picks the person first and then chooses the product, do we have a true identity? Do we say that, well, we're just in the photographic business? I would like to share with you something that D. Forbes Lay said regarding what business is really all about. He said the following thing: we are a marketing organization. Now think about that. We are a marketing organization created to give people emotional satisfaction Now think about what he said there. We are a marketing organization created to give people emotional satisfaction. And they will use the product to relive the experience over and over. Now, let me give you an example. A photographer goes out and does a wedding, has the personality of a doorknob, really is not attentive to the bride. There is no excitement that exudes from him and his staff on her very special day. She just bought a wedding photographer. She bought a wedding photographer because everybody talked about all the awards, because of how beautiful the photographs were. So she bought a reputation. She didn't buy a relationship. And the longer the day goes on, the more disenchanted she is with his presence there. He's not an addition to the wedding. He is not adding to the excitement. He's an interruption. He's bossy. He's aggressive. He's demanding. He's rude to her mother, rude to her grandmother. But he's making beautiful photographs because he's an artiste and he's doing his thing. Now, let's go to another photographer. This photographer shows up on the wedding day. He's attentive, he's excited, he loves them. They know, the bride knows that she's loved by her photographer. Does a nice job. He spends the time, he's accommodating, he listens, he talks, he's a part. They look back and they just can't thank him enough for being a part of their wedding day. He added to the experience. He made those tense moments funny. He took and alleviated, and he let that tension out at the right times. He was skilled. The two brides show up. The one bride has incredibly beautiful images. But for some reason, when she looks at those images, they look fakey. They don't look right. Now the judges are going to award that album 100. And this photographer is talking about how beautiful they are and what all he's going to do with that. This other bride over here, she relives her day in that wedding album. It was a beautiful photograph. They were nice. They weren't award-winning. Now what happened? It goes back to that point that this other person realized that they were there to give her emotional satisfaction and create nice photographs. This other person showed up to do their thing, and the wedding day was about them, not her. I can assure you that this studio over here will have a higher sales average than this award-winning photographer over here. Now, as we look at these two studios, and we look at the success level of those two studios, that the marketing organization created to give people emotional satisfaction wins in that wedding scenario. And we see this repeated all over. What's very interesting is that I would see studios that have existed and they've created a very nice product for consumers for a long period of time. And people who do not know and understand merchandising would actually prophesy that if somebody who came in who was really, really gifted, who made all these award-winning prints, would actually put them out of business. And over a period of time, these people come and they go and they come and they go. And yet existing is this studio, who is what I would classify a relationship-oriented studio, who listens to their customers, who makes the shopping experience an experience. And people look forward to it. People want to do business with them. Because when they walk in the front door, the most important person at that point in time is the customer. There are three parts to the sales. One is there's the producer. Second of which is the product. The third of which is the customer. And smart business owners know that the most important of all of those three is the customer. A lot of studios will feature a product. And understand that at that point in time, if you're limited to a product line, you are limiting the amount of people who will come to you. And that's called niche marketing. And in some locales, in some areas, you can niche market. For example, it is possible that in some market areas, you can make a great living selling only a Jaguar. But in other market areas, you may have to develop what we would call a foreign import center, which would include Jaguars, Kias, Hyundais, or you could do European cars, but you'd have to have a variety of cars ranging from the affordable to the expensive to be able to survive. So at the backdrop of this, we have to know our market area, what will or will not be able to be merchandised. In every market area, there are limitations. And so I speak broadly to a studio that is going to have to be more of a full-service studio to their locale, who would probably ideally love to do only a designer photograph, but find themselves in a position that they're going to have to take care of the needs and the wants of their market base. Now, interestingly enough, that requires stronger skills photographically. And the sales team, it requires better skills on their part because they have to know how to change the hats. They have to know how to interview someone to move between these product lines and how to present them and how to present this product line without demeaning or diminishing the value of the wall furnishings line. So as we look at the sales cycle and we look at how we begin our sales plan, first and foremost, we have to understand that the way to build a relationship is to listen to the customer. Talk to them. Don't tell them who you are until it's clear in your minds of who they are. Don't tell them how good you are. Ask questions that express how good you are. Now, here's another profound truth that we will look at as we go through. The more you talk, the less they trust you. And the more you get them to talk, the more they trust you. Now let's analyze that just a little bit as we lay the groundwork for this. In the first contacts, when they come in, they are coming into your environment. They have and feel like they have no control. They have and feel like you are a stranger. And one of the things that I ask a lot of the designers that we train is this simple question. If your very best friend called to talk to you about having portraits created, would you respond differently to her than you would if a total stranger called and talked about having portraits taken? This is an important question because this is the door to the secret. If you can develop the same rapport building skills to make someone feel important and feel like that you are their friend from the first contact, your success will go up. Now, why is it so important to have this relationship? One is very important. You are in the studio as a designer to help